What's up, Guardians, and welcome back, Warlocks. I'm Profane, thanks for checking out the video. We recently covered the top 7 best Prismatic Warlock builds that you should be using right now, and as a response to that video, I had a lot of players swearing by the synergy that the Mataiodoxia has with the Prismatic subclass. After checking this exotic out on a Strand subclass, I was really on the fence over its capability of performing at a higher level with Prismatic than it does with Strand. But boy was I wrong. This is a wickedly powerful and super fun build for Warlocks to use right now, and it'll bring you success at any level of content. The Mataiodoxia comes with a Stylosticics intrinsic trait, which provides several enhancements for arcane needles. These will now have the intrinsic ability to pierce barrier shields, and just one arcane needle will bring down a barrier champion shield even on Grandmaster difficulty. When striking an enemy with an arcane needle, the enemy will become targeted in green highlights for all teammates to see. I love using this on overload champions and enemies who teleport because it keeps them visible for everyone. If that enemy dies within 10 seconds of becoming targeted, they will create a suspending detonation, which will capture all enemies within 4 meters. These suspensions will prevent barrier champions from popping shields, and they will stun unstoppable champions. When striking an already marked enemy with 2 arcane needles, the enemy will instantly trigger a suspending detonation, on top of the detonation that's going to be triggered on death, giving us the opportunity to create a chain reaction of suspensions, which will greatly improve our ability to manage large groups of enemies and champions. As you defeat suspended enemies, or defeat enemies with arcane needles, you'll gain additional melee energy, recharging between 15% and 33% of your energy based on the difficulty level of that enemy. We'll have as many as 3 arcane needle charges, and between the bonus energy that the Mataiodoxia provides, along with how we have this Prismatic subclass set up, we'll be able to have those charging faster than ever, giving us a huge advantage in any activity. There's quite a few weapons that will synergize very well with this build, and we'll discuss many of them later in the video. But there's one exotic that will provide unparalleled benefits when using the Mataiodoxia, and that is the Wishkeeper exotic bow. This bow builds up a charged quiver that creates a suspending trap for enemies. Landing precision hits and final blows will build this charge up, and once it's ready, you can lay down this trap by hip firing the Wishkeeper. Having a second source to suspend enemies will result in us having more melee energy, allowing us to create even more suspensions. What's even better about the synergy between these exotics is that the Wishkeeper deals 50% bonus damage against any suspended enemy. And with Hatchling as its catalyst refit, we'll be able to create threadlings that will add to the bonus damage that we're going to be able to deal. So not only are we going to be able to trap just about every enemy we're engaged with, but we'll be able to deal a significant amount of extra damage, which will really come in handy against champions. Now that we know what the Mataiodoxia is going to do for us, let's talk about how this Prismatic build can amplify things even further. With the use of the Feed the Void aspect, we'll have Devour getting triggered whenever we defeat an enemy with an ability, and this does count when we defeat enemies with Tangles and Threadlings. Once Devour is active, we'll gain bonus grenade energy and health restoration on every final blow. This will provide between 8 and 20% bonus grenade energy and a full restoration of our health bar with each enemy defeated. To feed into our Strand synergy, we're using the Weaver's Call aspect in combination with Phoenix Dive. Phoenix Dive will trigger Cure, providing us and teammates with instant health recovery. And because of Weaver's Call, we'll generate 3 threadlings. These little green rats will seek out and attack enemies that are within range, but if nothing's nearby, they'll just perch right up to us. Because of our selected fragments and artifact mods, we have chosen to go with Vortex grenades, but based on activity modifiers, there will be situations where storm grenades can be just as beneficial, if not more so. When it comes to our choice in fragments, we are going with a Facet of Courage. This will cause our light-based abilities to deal 10% bonus damage against any enemy who's under the effect of a darkness debuff. Since we'll be able to cause unraveling and suspending detonations with our arcane needles, we'll be able to provide a constant bonus in damage to our Vortex grenades. Our Vortex grenades will cause enemies to become weakened, thanks to the Facet of Dominance. Weakened enemies will take 15% bonus damage, but since we're also using the Expanding Abyss artifact mod, weakened enemies will take 25% bonus damage from any void ability or weapon. We plan on equipping at least 1 to 2 void weapons with this build, and to go along with Vortex grenades, we have Nova Bomb as our selected super. So by hitting an enemy with an Arcane Needle and then a Vortex grenade, we'll be able to deal a considerable amount of extra damage with our super or our weapons. Weakening enemies will also open us up to generating Void Overshields thanks to the Void Hegemony artifact mod. Each weakened enemy that we defeat grants us with a 15-point overshield. When a Void Overshield is active, we'll take 50% less damage, helping us get through those waves of enemies much more easily. We're also using the Facet of Bravery, which is going to do multiple things for us. When we defeat enemies with our grenade, our void weapons will gain volatile rounds, and when defeating enemies with a powered melee, our strained weapons will gain unraveling rounds. Enemies who become volatile create void explosions as they take further damage, and enemies who are unraveled take continuous strain damage over an 8-second time frame. So with Arcane Needles and Vortex grenades, we'll be able to maximize on this fragment's benefits, giving our strand and void weapons a massive bonus. We've also got the Facet of Dawn equipped, so when we strike enemies with our Arcane Needles, we'll trigger Radiance. When Radiance is active, all of our weapons will have a 25% increase in damage, and they'll have the ability to pierce barrier shields, even though that's something our void weapons will do because of Volatile, and our strand weapons will do because of Unraveling. Because of the Radiant Orbs artifact mod, we'll be able to trigger that Radiance whenever we collect an orb, so we should be able to maintain Radiance for as long as we stay in combat. Because of our use of Arcane Needles and Suspensions, this build performs much better when we keep a little bit of a distance between us and our enemy. But even if we get rushed and overwhelmed, we'll have a ton of resources at our disposal to keep us in the fight. And this is why we're using the Facet of Protection, which is going to give us a 15% increase in damage resistance whenever we're surrounded by enemies. And when we are in our Transcendent state, that resistance bonus will increase to 32%. That roaming Transcendency super is a big reason that this build excels far beyond its strand counterpart. When Transcendence is active, we'll have rapid regeneration of all of our abilities, so we'll be able to generate a ton of Arcane Needles, giving us the ability to continuously suspend enemies as we pummel them with those combo grenades. Between the added crowd control capabilities, the bonus damage resistance, and the void overshields, we should have a much easier time staying alive, even in higher difficulty content. We addressed a few of our artifact mods already, but now that we've covered all of our subclass options, let's go ahead and take a look at the rest. Threaded Blast will cause strained weapons to trigger bigger detonations whenever shooting tangles, causing them to deal bonus damage. And because of Elemental Siphon, our strained weapons will generate extra tangles. We also have Counter Energy, so when we stun champions, we're going to regain 25% bonus ability energy to the least charged ability. And with the use of Shield Crush, we'll be able to have bonus energy and bonus damage coming to our Vortex grenades and Arcane Needles. When we have Radiance active, our grenades will have a 25% increase to their regeneration and a 25% increase in damage. And when we have our Void Overshield active, we'll get the same deal applied to our Arcane Needle. So between our class tree options and artifacts, we're getting a massive increase to the regeneration of all of our abilities, along with tons of sources of debuffs and bonus damage, much more so than we could ever see on a strand build. Let's go ahead and switch gears now and talk about the other weapons included in our loadout. The Wishkeeper might be the main exotic of choice, but there are others that will provide some great benefits. The Quicksilver Storm and Final Warning would both be outstanding primary options. The Final Warning would be an especially powerful option since sidearms can stun unstoppable champions, and this weapon applies its own unraveling effects. To give this build a substantial increase in its damage output, the Euphony Linear Fusion Rifle would make a great option for those who have it. And to increase our survivability, the Navigator would provide us with Woven Mail and cause enemies to become severed. In our special and heavy slots, we intend on using void weapons so that we can cash in on volatile rounds and bonus damage against weakened enemies. To that extent, the Wilder Flight, Grenade Launcher, and Commemoration Heavy Machine Gun are the two that I recommend the most. But any void weapon with destabilizing rounds or repulsor brace would be an absolute treasure with this build. and any legendary weapon with Grave Robber or Pugilist would synergize nicely to go along with our increased melee use. This way we would either have bonus melee energy getting generated or our weapons automatically reloaded. Heavy strand weapons with Hatchling or Slice would provide great synergy for us, but between the two, I would much rather have Slice so that we can neuter our enemy's damage output by 40%. When it comes to this build's armor, the main character stats that we want to focus on will be Resilience and Strength. Resilience will reduce incoming damage by as much as 30 points, and with maxed out Strength, we'll have our Arcane Needles charging in less than 50 seconds. Focusing towards recovery would also be wise so that we can increase how quickly our health regenerates and how quickly our class ability recharges. When it comes to armor mods, our main goal is to play off of the use of Arcane Needles. We are using Ashes to Assets to gain bonus super energy whenever we defeat enemies with our Vortex grenades. Since the Arcane Needle's primary function is to trigger suspensions, we'll defeat more enemies with Vortex grenades, which is why we've chosen Ashes to Assets and not hands-on. We will be using melee kickstart on our gloves, so when we are on our last Arcane Needle, we'll generate as much as 34% bonus energy as that last needle is used. Melee kickstart will consume armor charges to generate this energy, and to create armor charges, we are using Siphon Helmet mods, the Firepower Gloves mod, and Reaper on our class item. We've also got Momentum Transfer on our gloves, which means dealing grenade damage will generate bonus melee energy. We'll get the same benefit when casting our class ability thanks to the Outreach mod, and because of the Invigoration Boots mod, we'll even gain melee energy when collecting orbs. So thanks to all these armor mods, we'll be able to have our Nova Bomb super back much faster, and will increase the production of Arcane Needles greatly. And when it all comes together, you have yourself an absolutely perfect prismatic build that's accomplished through the use of the Mataiodoxia Exotic Chest Piece. I really thought this exotic was better suited with Strand, but after experiencing the power that you have at your fingertips, the Mataiodoxia is at its best when used with Prismatic. And with that, we've come to an end of today's perfect Mataiodoxia Prismatic Warlock build. Have you tried out this amazing combination already? If so, let us know what your thoughts about it were down in the comments, and whether you preferred the Wishkeeper, the Final Warning, or the Quicksilver Storm. And if you haven't tried this build, well, you need to get on that. If you need help setting up this build for yourself, then be sure to check out the Mobalytics link that's down in the description, where you'll find this and a ton of other great in-game builds. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel. If you're a new Light Guardian just starting your journey, or a battle-hardened veteran just looking for a new place to call home, then be sure to check out the Discord link that's also down in the description, and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.